looks like a mini India.
Yeah.
There are too many Indians here.
We're Canadian, we're multicultural, but come on.
If we're going to their country, we will have to adapt to their culture, right? They should do the same thing here.
Well, I do feel like I'm a stranger in my own country.
One of the most obvious consequences of the federal government's die-hard commitment to mass immigration would be the creation of ethnic enclaves, cities and towns across the country that don't look very Canadian and don't feel very Canadian. But one of the most infamous examples of that in our country is Brampton, here in the GTA. Let me just take you through some of the most recent demographic data that we have available about Brampton from the 2021 census. Now keep in mind, Canada's population has spiked since 2021, and the majority of immigrants who come to Canada come to Ontario, and it appears that Brampton is where most of them happen to end up. The 2021 census data shows that Brampton is more than 80% visible minority. That means it's more than 80% non-white. Well, you break that data down even further, you start to figure out where everyone who lives in Brampton comes from. The top ethnic origin in the Brampton 2021 census data is India, unsurprisingly. 180,300 people who live in Brampton come from India. The second happens to be Punjabi. Why they are separated into different categories, I'm not quite sure, but 57,000. After that, it is Sikh at 43,940. Then you get Canadian born at 40,000. If you keep going further, you see that Hindu and Pakistani both come in right around 26,000. Now, what's most remarkable about Brampton's demographic data is that from 2016 to 2021, Brampton lost 6,000 people who were originally born in Canada. That's not the percentage of them declining, that's people who have actually left Brampton. Meanwhile, in that same period of time, Brampton's foreign-born population increased to 343,690, an increase of 11.3% compared to the decrease of 2.16% of Canadian-born residents in Brampton. Non-permanent residents who live in Brampton in 2016 went from 9,000 to 40,000. Again, that's just from 2016 to 2021. And we know, of course, that Canada's temporary immigration has spiked in the same period of time. So this data, it's safe to say, is quite out of date. But even still, that tells you a lot about the makeup of Brampton. That tells you a lot about the makeup of this ethnic enclave. So we're here to try and figure out if Brampton really deserves its reputation as one of the most infamous ethnic enclaves in Canada. We're going to explore the city, take a look around, and see what we can find in Brampton for ourselves. You've been here for how many years?
15 years on this side of town and 5 years on the other side of town.
Wow, and so you must have seen it change quite a lot.
Well, yeah, the other side's modern, but it's a nice modern, and they're turning this into an ugly kind of modern. I think it was called Flower Town. Now it's called Bangladesh. So I'm in such a minority, it isn't funny. You look everywhere you look, it's the same thing. It's people. Why do they keep coming in? My place is getting torn down for a parking lot. My apartment I've been in for 4 or 5 years.
Well, that was fascinating. We're here in downtown Brampton. We just spoke with the man who says he's been here for 15 to 20 years. He says the city has completely changed since when he first seen it. The demographics are so noticeable that it's almost hard for him to bear. He also said something very interesting, which is that they're tearing down apartment buildings where he says the majority of Canadians actually live, and they're replacing them with parking lots. They're replacing them probably with larger high-rise buildings to make way for more people coming into this country. It does say something very strange about what's going on here, which is you have Canadians who feel like a minority in this city, who've been here for a long time, and now they're being kicked out of their rental apartments to make way for parking lots and other things. That's just the first person we've actually spoken to here in Brampton in the downtown area, and I can imagine that we might hear some very similar things, but we don't just want to speak to people who have been here for a long time. We also want to speak to people who are new to this city and what they make of living in this city and what they think about the reputation it has across the country. How long have you guys been here for?
1 year.
Okay, 1 year? Did you guys know, one of the things that a lot of Canadians think about Brampton is that it's very Indian. There are a lot of Indian people who live here.
All Punjabis.
Yeah, did you guys know that? Did you guys know that before you came to Brampton?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We know very well.
Is it known back in India that Brampton is like that?
Yeah. That's why we come here.
Yeah.
because there are a lot of college opportunities.
Yeah.
So that's why Indians come here.
We're doing a video about Brampton. We're just asking people if they like living in this city and what they think about it.
Oh, that's nice. Well, I mean, it's a pretty decent place. Then again, it's like a mini India in short.
Yeah.
You would see a lot of Indian people going around.
Yeah.
If you just scroll around, you'll see Indian people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty intense. We're asking people what they think. It feels more like an Indian city than it does like a Canadian city, right?
It does. It does.
You think that maybe there are too many Indian people in Brampton? Because they say that the demographics are pretty intense. Yeah.
There are too many Indians here.
Prices went up, so did COVID, so did the crime.
So the crime's bad,
First
right?
job period of feast everybody, right? Every weekend, every day, there's a fight all of the time.
The fight?
All the time.
Really?
And homeless fighting homeless. Why? He knows that himself, right? Yep. Not the racism that you worry about. It's the people that have nothing you gotta worry about. You got more than they got, they're gonna take it on you.
Wow.
You get up $10 when you'll get robbed.
It's really bad.
That's bad.
Wow, what a contrast you just saw there. In one shot, you had new immigrants to Canada who say that, in their opinion, they're from India. They say that Brampton has too many Indians in the city. And then, as we're talking to them about that, you've got Canadians who come here through the shot who say that the city is full of crime, it's dangerous, it's a place it's worse than they imagined it to be, and it's gotten much worse over a period of time. What a stark contrast you can see just in that one interaction about what this city is really like, because I've got to tell you, it's strange to walk around here and seeing what appears to be poor, homeless white people and a very large influx of newly landed immigrants, all specifically from India. And it's not just me saying that, it's the Indians themselves who've said that themselves. And it's not just me saying that, it's the Indians themselves who are saying that. Very strange. Well, we've been tipped off by more than one person who we've spoken to that the dangerous part of Brampton is this way. It's heading north out of downtown toward the park, where there's a lot of tents and a lot of homeless people. In fact, it's right behind this 7-Eleven apparently. And I just have to say again, the contrast is shocking, really. A large number of white people who are homeless, poor, drug addicted, who complain about the state of the city, not due to the demographics, but actually due to the crime and due to the economic situation in this city. And then basically every immigrant we've spoken to who lives in Brampton, they've all said the same thing. They're from India, and they say there's too many Indians who live in this city. It's a fascinating contrast to witness. Do you think the immigration situation in Brampton has played a role in some of the downturn that's faced by a lot of people here?
Yeah, we don't want to be racist, but you know what? We're whatchamacallit, invaded. We've been like
That's actually that was a topic like
Oh yeah, you spoke about that a few hours ago.
Yeah.
Just now.
Yeah.
It's like an ant and a sugar, you know.
And you're feeling invaded.
Yes.
Wow.
It's out of control.
Yeah.
I mean, every which way you go, it's this, that, and you can't even listen to yourself anymore because they're talking their own language. We're Canadian, we love everybody. We're Canadian, we're multicultural, but come on.
But I remember Brampton when only this side was here.
Really?
Yeah.
So you've been here for quite a while.
Yeah. It has gone down, but most of the riffraff, I hate to say it,
Yeah.
they're all dead now.
Really?
So I
Is that because of
fentanyl?
drugs and
that's,
fentanyl?
Yeah. It's getting into the country and it's killing people, and that's what the sad part of Brampton is.
Yeah, well,
No housing,
yeah.
not enough shelters.
And yet we've seen that the population of Brampton continues to increase at an incredible
but
pace.
It's not really, it's not Canadian people that are producing.
Right.
I'm not being disrespectful. I don't mean
course.
to be.
Of course.
I'm just saying that most people in Canada have 1 to 2 kids. But so many newcomers have come. They'll populate us.
Yeah.
So I do feel like I'm a stranger in my own country.
You know, but I like my street. We have very good neighbors. We have very nice parks in Brampton, which I like, for riding bikes and walking, hiking, whatever. But something that I don't like and my neighbors don't like and a lot of people don't like, it's the immigration. It's too much.
Has it really gotten noticeably worse over the past few years?
Oh yes, because on my street, someone sold their house and then you ended up with a rental house and they leave 15 in the house, and
Wow.
they're not very clean. The garbage are all over the place and we have to talk to them, please clean up the property, and they're very messy. I'm French, but I speak English. I don't speak French.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And they should do the same thing. And the thing is, they should adopt our culture. They choose to come here, choose to get the culture,
Yeah.
If we're going to their country, we will have to adapt to their culture, right? They should do the same thing here. But here it's like free fall,
There's too many immigrants in this town. Should have bring the immigrants into Canada and come here instead of everywhere else.
And why do you think they all choose to live in Brampton?
Because there ain't no Sikh temple in Timmins.
All right, folks, well, that wraps up our field trip to Brampton, of all places. Not your typical field trip location, but it was well worth the trip because we got to witness and got to see firsthand what this city actually looks like, what this ethnic enclave looks like. Besides the data, what is life like every single day? Our field trip started off with a trip to the Hindu temple, where we got to see the famous Monkey Man statue, the Hanuman statue. That was quite the sight to behold. And then, of course, we also went to check out some very ornate, very large Sikh temples as well, the Gurdwaras in the area. We got to see one, and it was quite the sight itself. But then we went to downtown to start talking with some locals, started asking people what they make of living in Brampton, if Brampton feels like a Canadian city to them, and the change that Brampton has gone through over the past few years. The 2021 census data tells us that the overwhelming majority of foreign-born people who live in Brampton come from India. And it lives up to that. It certainly looks that way. It really does feel like a mini India. The census data also says that Brampton, as of 2021, was 81% non-white. And I think it lived up to that, if not even more, from what we saw in this just short few hours. But there was one thing that really struck me, and that was the contrast in this city, the living standards in this city, for people who have come to this country, come to this city just a few months ago even, for some, as we spoke to, and even just a few years ago for others, most of whom were international students studying at international colleges here in Brampton. And then for people who have been living in this city for many years, since the 80s, since the 70s for some. Now, what really surprised me, and what you don't hear about in the news when it comes to Brampton, is the sheer amount of drug use and homelessness that the Canadian population are faced with here. We went underneath a tunnel, and it was as if we went into a completely different city. We didn't see any Indian people there. What we did see, however, were very large numbers of white Canadians who were homeless, addicted to drugs, and relying on a church to provide them with some assistance, hopefully let them heal and get better. That was not something that I was expecting to see here. However, when we spoke to people, that's what they told us life was like in Brampton. It was not just an ethnic enclave, but in fact, it was a place where there is an unbelievable amount of newcomers to this city, people who are bringing their own culture, and that's fine. But in fact, it's the Canadian-born population who are struggling the most and whose lives have only gotten worse. Funny you don't hear about that whenever we hear about Brampton. Now, we did get to speak to locals. They obviously said that Brampton is taking in too many immigrants, that life here is not that great. Some were optimistic, but the majority were not. And the majority had noted that the city had changed rapidly since their time living here. We also managed to speak with a lot of immigrants who live in Brampton, and actually, they themselves said, in one case, that there were too many Indians in Brampton. So if they're saying that, then maybe there's something to it. Nonetheless, I have to tell you, this is really something to behold because the population does not mix in Brampton. The demographic change is very noticeable, and one group of people who live in Brampton seem to be doing pretty well. They seem to be studying, getting diplomas, living fine. Another group in Brampton, however, don't seem to be living so well. And that was something that I think people should really start to consider when they think about this city. All right, well, that's going to do it for us for our coverage here in Brampton. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Harrison Faulkner, and this is Ratioed.